Good afternoon. Welcome to Sports Nothing But Sports with Kent Sterling for Thursday, August 1st, 2019. Brought to you by the great people at Today's Dentistry. Dr. Mike O'Neill, best dentist there is. That's why I've gone to him the last 26 years. That's why you should call him right now and make your first appointment. 317-849-2933. In Bloomington today for Indiana University Football Media Day, a lot of optimism being expressed by Tom Allen and some LEOs. Also, which stand for love each other. You're going to get an LEO if you spend any time whatsoever with Tom Allen. We spoke to Kalen DeBoers, the offensive coordinator, Kane Wommack, the defensive coordinator, all the other assistant coaches. We spoke to players, all of them optimistic about the 2019 season. They believe that Indiana is going to turn a corner this year and that they're going to go to a bowl. You would think that they would. It is miserable to not be optimistic on August 1st when you're looking ahead at a long college football season. All right, if you're a cynic now and you played for Indiana football, it would be understandable. You can be cynical about Indiana University football, and you were well within your rights and well within kind of the parameters of good logic. But to be within that family and be anything but optimistic now is, it's fruitless and it's just silly. So if you're a fan, I hope you're optimistic. One thing, look, the I-69 extension is done to State Road 67. All right, but north of Martinsville, it's still a pain in the ass because this thing is going to take forever to complete all the way up to Indianapolis. But you can take 67 south from 465, where it hooks up with I-69. You're going to have clear sailing all the way to Bloomington. So that is now the way to get down to Bloomington for football and basketball games. Anyway, anybody who goes down there, you know what a pain in the ass it is. It's a little bit less a pain in the ass this year. One guy who's not a pain in the ass at all. Let's talk to Kane Wommack, the new defensive coordinator for the Hoosiers. You were the linebackers coach. Obviously, this is a different job. What is going to be different for you, and what's going to be different for the team with you as a coordinator?
Well, that is a good question. I do think it's important to emphasize how Tom and I are probably more alike than we are different. We both cut our teeth in this defensive system under my dad at Ole Miss. And so we have a lot of the same philosophical beliefs. The one thing that I think that we have to improve in, not necessarily that will be different about me, but different about our team in 2019 is as we build confidence in one another, I want to see us communicate better and play with a different level of swagger. At times you had young players a year ago that were just trying to get lined up, right? Now those guys are confident in what they're doing, and when they have that confidence and swagger that they play with, it changes the outcome of games.
A lot of swagger. Swagger is always a good thing. Swagger is driven by excellence, right? You can't have swagger without being really good, and you get to coach a guy who's terrific in Marcelino Ball. How special a kid is he?
He's pretty special. He's athletically and his body type. I mean, we joke that he's a bit Greek god-like. He's a very gifted individual, and I've seen him just in the time that I've been around, just seeing him grow and mature into a player that is more consistent. He's always flashed ever since he's been here, but what I have challenged him and what our staff has challenged him to do is to become a more consistent football player every single down, and I think we saw the fruit of that labor in the springtime, and that will only get better in the fall.
There's no doubt about it. When he first was here as a freshman, you looked at him on the field, your eyes just like, whoop. He had that physical charisma that's like completely unmistakable. You've got a young group, but it's an experienced group, right? And that's a good thing.
It is. It is a youthful experience. Most of our players are going to be either redshirt freshmen, sophomores, or redshirt sophomores. And so the exciting thing is you look into 2019, 2020, and 21, right? And you're going to have all those players for the next 3 years. On top of that, that young experience is probably as talented as we've seen here in quite a while. And frankly, even some of the other places I've been, including Ole Miss, our talent is well above where we thought we might be going into year 3 of Tom.
As a 32-year-old guy, you're like 10 years removed from playing yourself. Yeah. Does that help you relate to these guys in a way that others can't?
That's an interesting question. I was not nearly as good of a football player as the guys that will walk out for the Swarm D this year. So from that regard, I would not say so. But, I am the millennial age, and they're post-millennials. And so the things that they grew up on are things that I somewhat grew up on. And so, I do like to connect with them. I like to joke and have a good time with them. And so they're tools in the tool belt, right? You got to find ways to connect to the millennial generation. And so for me, maybe that learning curve is a little bit lessened being a younger guy. But as I've gotten into this profession, it's about people that can connect. Older coaches, younger coaches, some of them have it, some of them don't.
Your dad, great coach. What'd you learn from him, and how has this been different from what you expected being your dad's son?
So first question there, he is the way to treat people, the way to handle yourself in this profession, whether you have success or adversity, I think is probably the thing that I've seen him at the highest of the highs. He had the number 1 and number 2 scoring defenses in the country at 2 different places. He's also been fired in his career, and how he handled those polar opposite situations probably was the best experience that I could get without actually having experience myself. What was your second question there? I'm sorry, how was it different?
Yeah, how is this different from what you expected, given the experience that you had being your dad's son?
Well, what's so different is that both Tom and my dad, most of the coaches that they have worked for over their career have been offensive head coaches, right? I worked for a defensive head coach, and he happened to call plays last season. And so that's a different dynamic in terms of, okay, well, doing this here, we may adjust this here, but him and I have to be on the same page about what that looks like, because he wasn't in the room as much this spring, and intentionally so that we could build chemistry as a defensive staff. And so I think if we had not had the relationship that we had already built over the years and the trust that him and I have in one another, that would be a more difficult endeavor. But I think we were both ready for it and prepared for it. And at the end of the day, communication is key.
Does growing up the way you did with your dad doing what he does, exactly the same thing you do, does that help you balance being a dad? Because you got 3 kids now, right?
Yeah,
so you've got 3 kids, and you're taking care of 50 guys on the defensive side of the ball, too.
So it's interesting because the football side of it has really not changed that much in terms of the hours and those things. What has changed is the recruiting and the amount of time you spend on social media. I remember my dad coaching my Little League baseball teams. He would run off the practice field in spring ball, and him and one of the assistant coaches there, a guy named Tyrone Nix, who's now at Ole Miss, would coach my baseball teams, for about 2 or 3 years growing up, right? So those are the things where you're like, well, that's harder to do this now at this day and age. But what I did take from him is whatever time you have to be intentional if you choose to be a good father and a good husband. And for me, the challenge is those 3 facets, right? Your job, your children, and your wife, doing a good job in those 3 areas. Don't leave much room for anything else. And I do try to do a good job in all 3 of those areas.
Does Tom get that?
He does. He does get that. Now, Tom's a workhorse now, and he has been that way ever since high school and up through his college career, and it's made him the man who he is today. We have had conversations about that fine line between great work ethic and working efficiently so that we can spread ourselves wider to cast a wider net in terms of our influence. And I think that's exactly why I'm in the position I am, because he wants to do that from a head coaching role. I can now do that from a defensive coordinator role, and then also champion our families on top of that.
What do you want to get done this year? What's success for the defense?
Changing the outcome of close games for us. And that's what I think everybody's seen the stat of how many close games and within 7 or 8 points that we were over the last 2 seasons. I want to help change the outcome of those close games. The experiences I've had both at Eastern Illinois as a defensive coordinator and then even at South Alabama, my first year we were able to knock off Mississippi State. We beat San Diego State coming in 19th in the country. Those were great upsets. We also beat Troy and Arkansas State the next year, who were teams that were probably the two favorite teams in our league. So I've seen how to make those upset wins happen, and that is the one thing that we have done here, is put ourselves in position to do that, and I want to see us take that next step.
Let me ask you this, because I saw you refer to your notes a couple of times during your opening statement. How much do you prepare for something like this, going up to a podium and getting ready for media day?
Well, I do like talking. I enjoy talking to people. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I do think that it is your responsibility as a representation of this team and program and university that when you get up and speak to people, you better be direct in what you have to say. And so I try to do I just typically draw an outline, as I'm going before and say, all right, here are the things that I want to make sure I outline and accomplish. So that way, maybe it answers some of the media's questions, right? And so less things that I have to field. And then on top of that, I just think it's more efficient that way.
You being an outgoing guy and being personable as you are, that's got to help recruiting, right? Or at least if it doesn't necessarily help, then it's got to make it a little bit more fun going out and meeting people and being social.
Well, it does. I think on the front end, I think when you build a relationship with somebody, you recognize when you can communicate well, how to build a relationship with them, but then how to be intentional with the key players in that person's decision, right? Yeah. And so how do I handle a group of people as opposed to just one individual? And then on the back end, when the rubber meets the road and a kid needs that last bit of, I hate to use the word convincing, right? But conversation that you have about what his next 4 years are going to look like. I think to be an orator is to be able to paint that picture for him, what his next 4 years look like, and that I want to help him accomplish that dream as he comes here.
What do you sell when you go out and you talk to kids? And maybe sell's the wrong word, but what do you tell them about Indiana football that's going to compel them to come down to Bloomington?
It's funny when you say that. So, for example, James Miller was a kid that we signed in the 2018 class, linebacker for us that at the end of the deal, he had Florida State and Oregon and Iowa and some really storied programs that we were battling against. And for him, the narrative was a relationship that we can build here, the comfort level that he felt with myself and Tom Allen. And then to me, because you work for a defensive head coach and you're going to play for a defensive head coach and the experience that I have and the experience that our system has had in success over a 30-year career of my dad and both Tom and I, the development that we're going to present to you, so how we're going to develop you both short-term and so that we can get you on the field, and long-term so that you're playing your best ball 4 years down the road. Right. And then how do we utilize you in our scheme so that we're taking advantage of your full skill set as an athlete, right? We're not just going to make you a one-dimensional player because there's 32 teams in the NFL and they all play different schemes, right? We have to be multiple enough to showcase your full skill set for the next level.
That's Kane Wommack, defensive coordinator for the Hoosiers. The quarterback position, a lot of questions being asked about the quarterback position. You've got three guys. You've got Jack Tuttle, the transfer from Utah. You've got Peyton Ramsey, kind of the incumbent starter. And you've got Michael Penix coming off an injury, who a lot of people like as the potential starter for this team, a guy who can move that offense both with his arms and his legs. Let's talk to Michael Penix. I saw you three guys hanging out. I mean, everybody knows you guys are all vying for the starting job for IU football. You guys are hanging out there, seem to get along pretty well. Is there a sense of competition or camaraderie with you guys?
I'll say, everybody says competition, but we're brothers at the end of the day. We're all on the same team. We all fighting for the same thing. We all want to be bowl champion, we all want to win a bowl, be together as a team, and we just want what's best for the team. We're all going to go out and dominate the best of our abilities.
What do you do really well that you think makes you the guy who could do that job?
I feel like just from last year, I've been a more vocal leader to the team. I've been more vocal every single day out there in practice and the weight rooms, even outside of football, I'm always making sure everybody stay on track. I feel like that's been a big impact.
Is that something you have to work on, or does that come naturally?
I feel like it come natural, but maybe it's just last year maybe not everybody like seen it. So I had worked on that a lot this past off season, and it's really improved.
Well, it's tough to be the young guy and be the loud guy, right? Being an older guy and being a loud guy, that's not that tough.
Right. I feel like that's what it didn't hold me back last year, but that's what I thought about a lot. But I had Coach had talked. I had talked to. Yeah. It don't matter what age you are. You can be a leader. You can lead by example, by anything you do. Anybody could be a leader. It don't matter your age. So that really stuck to me.
Yeah, the offense is going to rely on a quarterback, but it's also going to rely on Stevie Scott. Last year as a freshman, Scott compiled over 1,000 yards rushing. He's stronger. He's faster, according to him. You had a great freshman year. Did you see that coming?
Well, I just always had a confidence in myself, just to be that player and just perform to my best ability. But also, I had to thank my coaching staff and my O-line for helping me, become the player I was last year.
Are you a speed running back who bruises or a bruising running back with good speed?
I believe I'm a balanced running back. I worked on my speed this season, so I feel like now I could be both, a bruising back with speed.
What's your expectation for this season?
My expectations for this season is just to keep improving as a man and on the field and off the field and just help my team win games and just keep improving. How
are you better as a sophomore than you were as a freshman?
I feel I'm not more experienced, but I've been here, so now that I have a year under my belt, I just know what's happening and just what will go on with college football.
One of the offensive linemen who's going to be expected to open holes for Stevie Scott and protect whoever the quarterback is Hunter Littlejohn. We spoke to him earlier today. You guys have been together for a long time. You guys are like an NFL crew that's been together like forever, aren't you?
Yeah, with Simon Coy and I, we're especially that way. Just kind of through the past 3 or 4 years, we've developed a great relationship, and now it's kind of filling those couple holes that have also kind of been alongside. Brandon and Wes were great friends of ours. We were all a big unit, and I think Harry and Caleb have been kind of filling that role pretty well.
Caleb's a damn monolith, isn't he? That's the biggest human being I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's big, he's strong. Obviously, he's like 6'9" or whatever he is. But the encouraging thing about him is he's really gotten in shape this year. He's really, grown in strength, grown in quickness, grown in just his overall mentality. And I think we're really excited to see what he can do at the right tackle spot.
What is your responsibility in that development with a guy like Caleb, where you've been around the block and here's this kid and he's got a lot of gifts, including great size? How important is it for you guys to kind of nurture him?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was just making sure he got his mindset right. And, he got his mindset right from day one. And he's had a hell of an offseason, and I think he's just kind of seen the way that some of us work. And he liked where we were going, so he just decided to kind of follow along. And he's been the most improved O-lineman we've had this offseason, and just kind of the gains and developments he's made as a player have been very encouraging. And I think he's going to do big things for us.
You're sitting next to Stevie Scott. What's it like to block for a guy like that?
Very exciting. The thing I like about Stevie most is he just kind of runs with his head down, and nothing's really going to stop him until he's taken down. He can make a lot out of nothing, which makes our jobs a little bit easy. And, kind of how we've seen in past running backs, just the development he's made from the end of last season to now. I'm expecting exciting things from him. So,
what kind of development? Just speed, strength?
Speed, strength, all the development that we have with the guys in the weight room. They've been phenomenal for the majority of the team, and Stevie's one guy for sure who's just made incredible improvements in that department, and that's only going to translate to a much better running back on the field too.
Is there a difference in blocking for different guys like Peyton, Michael, or Jack?
Honestly, not really. At least for me. You look at a couple years ago when you had the difference between, Rich and Peyton, with Rich, you weren't going to have to block for like 5 seconds ever because he'd be able to at least find something to throw the ball to. And you knew with Peyton, there'd be kind of a scramble ability. So really with that, I guess you could tell the difference a little bit. But, Peyton and Mike both have the ability to, scramble, get out of pressure if needed. They both are able to make smart choices and throw the ball. But I'd say for the most part, our job relatively stays the same. I think they both have great leadership abilities, and they're able to keep the pace of play going pretty similarly and pretty fluidly. So for us, we just kind of trust who's back there, and we do our job, you do your job. That's kind of the trust system we got amongst each other. So
that's Hunter Littlejohn, who along with Coy Cronk and Simon Stepaniak are going to form the core of that offensive line that is going to power the Hoosiers either to victory or defeat. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the schedule. Go over parts of the schedule and see just how successful this Indiana team can be. Non-conference. All right, you've got Ball State, you've got Eastern Illinois, you've got UConn. Ball State is at Lucas Oil Stadium. It's going to be the biggest game of the year for the Ball State Cardinals. I think the Hoosiers win the next weekend. They're in Bloomington against Eastern Illinois. I think they're going to win that game. UConn on September 21st, they've got to win that game. If you don't win all three of those games, you have no chance whatsoever to go to a bowl. The Big Ten opener is going to be the weekend before the UConn game. It's against Ohio State. It is here. And so, can they beat Ohio State at Memorial Stadium? I don't know. Let's table that one. On September 28th, they go to Michigan State. I think they're going to get beat. They play Rutgers at home on October 12th after a week off. They're going to win that game. At Maryland the next weekend, I think they got a good chance to win that game. Then they're at Nebraska. Maybe. That's kind of a coin flip. Nebraska wasn't very good last year. Their first year under Scott Frost, I think Indiana's got a shot in that game. Then they play Northwestern at Memorial Stadium. You got to be able to win that game. If you win that game, you got a real shot at a bowl. Then they finish up at Penn State, against Michigan at Memorial Stadium, and at Purdue. Boy, oh boy, those three look like losses, don't they? So they win the three non-conference games. That's 3 wins. They lose against Michigan State. They lose against Penn State at Penn State. They lose against Michigan. They lose against Purdue. That's 4 losses. Rutgers, that's a win. So you're 4-4. At Maryland, if that's a win, you're 5-4. If you can beat Purdue, wow, you know what? The math just keeps looking like 5-7, doesn't it? So Ball State win, Eastern Illinois win, Ohio State loss, UConn win. And please, all the people who are saying that Indiana's going to beat Ohio State, for the love of God, it hadn't happened since Joe Stasiak was an offensive lineman for Ohio State. That's how long it's been since Indiana has beaten Ohio State. It's been a long time. I got to see it before I can believe it. There is no undergraduate student in Bloomington who is alive the last time Indiana beat Ohio State. All right, so all this optimism about Indiana beating Ohio State, I love it. Look, but the only thing certain about that game is that's when the media guide photo is going to be taken of Memorial Stadium, because it's going to be jam-packed with people wearing what looks to be red. For Indiana fans, it's going to be crimson. For Ohio State fans, it's going to be scarlet. But who the hell can tell the difference from 12,000 feet in the air? And that's where that photo is going to be taken from. Anyway, Ohio State's a loss, so they're 3-1. At Michigan State, 3-2. Rutgers, that's a win, 4-2. At Maryland, let's call it a win, 5-2. At Nebraska, going to call it a loss, 5-3. Northwestern in Bloomington, I got to think they're going to get beat. I think Northwestern is going to start rolling. So that's 5-4. You got 3 left. At Penn State, that's a loss, 5-5. You're going to have to split the home game against Michigan, the road game against Purdue, in order to get to 6, unless you can beat Ohio State or at Michigan or at Nebraska or Northwestern at Memorial Stadium. So you know what? Maybe they're in the game for 6-6 at the end of the thing, and going to the bowl is a reasonable expectation. I don't know. That sounds very optimistic to me. I am still not sold on Tom Allen as the guy leading this football program. I got to tell you the truth. I want Tom Allen to be successful. I really, really do. As I listen to him talk about being a head coach, I'm not sure that the guy was ready for the job. I'm not sure that he's ready for it right now. Those players, they're going to have to man up, and they're going to have to compete for Tom Allen and with Tom Allen and succeed in order for Tom Allen to maintain that gig. I think this is nut cutting time. I think we got to see some results from Indiana football this season, some progress, in order to think that Tom Allen is the long-term solution as the head coach of the Hoosiers. That's just the way it is. I'm one of those people. I got to see it to be able to believe it. 5-7, 5-7. That doesn't get it done in Bloomington, or at least it shouldn't. They go 6-6 this year and go to a bowl, then I'm singing a different tune. But right now, I got to tell you what I see. And what I see is a 5-7 team. I hope like hell they're better than that. I'm rooting for Tom Allen. But I have to see him to succeed to believe that Indiana can succeed with him. That's Sports, Nothing But Sports. I'm Kent Sterling. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Breakfast with Kent, bright and early at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning on Facebook Live, 8:15-ish. On Periscope Live, and then again tomorrow, Sports, Nothing But Sports. Harry's going to ask me a bunch of questions. It's going to be a Friday, and a Friday hullabaloo is what you're going to get during Sports, Nothing But Sports tomorrow. We had a great time down in Bloomington today. Thanks to Jeff Kegg and Tom Allen and everybody for hosting us down there. Had an absolutely wonderful time. Join me tomorrow morning, brought to you by the great people at Today's Dentistry.